the development of a personality, evolution of a personality like Wajid Ali Shah. In that aspect, I think my humble submission was that we can understand the contribution of Lucknow and Wajid Ali Shah to India's eclectic traditions. You have been listening to me for quite some time. I'm thankful to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Dev, for your illuminating talk and reminding us in such brief time that we need to hold cosmopolitanism, which has been a part of our history, now from the world of ulamas and Sufis to exploring Wajid Ali Shah's negotiations with religion and religious traditions. I call upon Dr. Sajjad Alam Rizvi from Department of History, Presidency University.
Dr. Rizvi specializes in medieval and early modern Indian history. His research interest is intellectual and cultural history of Islam and Muslim societies in India, with a focus on the flows of concepts or ideas and texts across the Islamic world. As part of his doctoral research, he has written his dissertation on Loving the Master, the debate on appropriate emotions in North India, 1750 to 1830. Over to you, sir.
Thank you for the kind introduction. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers and the collaborators of this seminar for inviting me, and a special thanks to Professor Subhishna Banerjee, who forced me to go back and start collecting the literary works of Wajid Ali Shah, still without knowing what to write on. But I stumbled on a text which is titled as Mubahasa Bainan Nafse wal Aq. And I'm thankful to Professor Amite who introduced you to the two major concepts of Nafs and Aq in the Persian Arabic or Sufi intellectual traditions. So the title of my paper is Wajid Ali Shah's Negotiations with Religion and Religious Tradition. So as the abstract reads, Wajid Ali Shah, the last king of Awadh, possessed a multifarious personality. Therefore, scholarly opinions are divided about his political career, cultural contributions, and literary works. For some scholars, he was the last tragic king who fell a victim to the irony of fate, while for some others, he was the lover of pleasures and happy life, Aisho-Nishan. And still for others, he was a patron who turned first Lucknow and then Nityabad into a magnetic center where men of literature and performance enjoyed the expert guidance, munificent patronage, and lavish hospitality under Wajid Ali Shah. In this the paper explores about Wajid Ali Shah's negotiations with the religion and the religious traditions by focusing on some of his literary works, such as Mubahasa Bainal Nafs wal Aq, which translates as a dialogue between the carnal soul and the intellect and Iman or faith. By analyzing these works, the paper argues that Nawab Wajid Ali Shah responded to the religious changes of the 18th and 19th centuries and actively participated. Since I have collected a lot of material, so and time will not allow me to complete it, so I am just giving you a very brief summary of the text and the textual or literary technique that Wajid Ali Shah is applying to foreground himself within the Imami Shia, which is the Shia who believes in the 12 Imams. Wajid Ali Shah says, Pedarat naam man kard Wajid Ali, Watan Lucknow mazhabam Jafari. Alira Bahadar Chu Banar Shanaktam, Yake Name Ambi Khud Saatam. So he said that he was named by his father as Wajid Ali. His watan was Lucknow and his mazhab or religious affiliation was with the Jafri schools of Islamic jurisprudence, and then he considers Ali as Haider. So this text, when I was reading it, I thought that Wajid Ali Shah was a religious scholar, a theologian, well informed of the religious debates within the Shia-Sunni discourses. But I realized once I started reading it that Wajid Ali Shah wrote this text in 3 Ramadans, in consecutive 3 Ramadans, and that is why the text is divided into 3 chapters. And what he does, that in the chapters, some questions, or this question are 28 total questions are there that Wajid Ali Shah is trying to address them. And the questions are raised by the nafs, and answers are provided by the aql. So nafs in the Sufi tradition is referred to a center of evils, the ego, the self, and sometimes the spirit. But intellect is something which is the place of knowledge, insight, and rationality that is used. First of all, the use of these 2 concepts in the 19th century by Wajid Ali Shah raises the question which I think will be addressed by Professor Kinshuk Chatterjee about which rationality he was referring to. Whether it was the rationality which comes from the Perso-Islamic philosophical traditions, or rationality that he was being introduced, which was brought by the Western or colonial context. Because out of these 28 questions, 11 questions concerns the biblical stories in the Quran. So how to provide rational justification of certain development that happens in the Israelite or biblical traditions. So for example, the first question that he asked is about why there is an abundant and repeated mentions or descriptions of the followers of Moses and Jesus in the Quran. Because Quran contains so many stories, sometimes in brief, sometimes in detail, which deals with the previous prophets. So this was a question that was raised by the nafs. Wajid Ali Shah here now refers to the aql. I think you are now familiar with these 2 terms, so I will use them very often. So according to Wajid Ali Shah, the Muslims had various worldly interactions, muamalat-e dunyavi, with the followers of Moses and Jesus. And that is why they were repeatedly mentioned in the Quran. The second justification that rationality provides is that their repeated discussions in the Quran is for the sake of itmam-e hujjat. Itmam-e hujjat, meaning completion of proof, is an Islamic concept which denotes that religious truth has been completely clarified by a messenger of Allah and made available to the people, so that people cannot make any excuse in front of God that he did not receive any guidance or he did not see any prophet who could guide him towards the final truth. So this was the third one, justification that the intellects give, that Muslims as a community, ummah, which came after these two communities of the Christians and the Jews, so their superiority had to be established by juxtaposing the virtues of the community of the follower against the evils that the earlier communities did to their prophets. So this is another question, that why Prophet Muhammad was sent after all the prophets as the seal of prophet. So there he gives a justification from the intellect that since the last of the child is the dearest one to its parents, the Muslim community came after all the communities, since God loves the community the best. Another question that he gives is, there is a story in the Quran that for a time being, when Musa went to the Mount Sinai for the divine manifestation or to witness the manifestation of divinity, so another person or another followers of Moses made a cow out of a clay, and by using magical tricks, the cow could speak. And the Quran refers to that person as Samiri. Okay. So why he asked the questions, or the Nafs asked the questions, why God gave such an effect to the clay which led so many people astray from the path of truth. So there he says, the answer that he gives, that God, the knower of the evident and the hidden, knew that their hearts were inclined towards polytheism and infidelity. Therefore, he exposed their inner states of heart for the people to see and observe and to perfect the proof. Here again he uses the word itmam-e hujjah, or completion of the proofs, so that they could not deny the truth. Another Israelite tradition that he talks about is the acceptance of caliphate or khilafah by David without any conditions, while when Luqman was given the choice, he made certain conditions. So there again he says that he refers, or he said the intellect refers to the divine wisdom, hikmate ilahiyah. And here he says that this divine wisdom had already decided that David will be endowed with kingship, while Luqman will be endowed with wisdom or hikmat. Luqman Hakim is the famous person in Persian Arabic stories, who is known for his wise words as well. Then again, he addresses a questions with reference to Moses. That once Moses was asked by God to bring a person to God who is the worst of all. So Moses saw a dog which was afflicted with certain disease, and for the time being, he thought that he would take that dog to God. But later on he thought that no, Moses himself was worse than the God. And then he offered himself to God. But the question now the Nafs asks, why did Moses not bring the polytheist or the kafir? Because the kafir and the mushriks are worse than the dog. So there Wajid Shah says that no, or the intellect says that no. Each and every individual, whether he is believer or non-believer, is potentially capable of believing in God. So this potentiality of belief prevented Moses from producing any infidel or kafir towards God. Thereafter, he again Nafs challenges the omnipotence of God when the apostles of Jesus, who are mentioned in one famous Quranic chapter which is known as the Surah Yasin. The first two apostles went to the king of Antioch to invite him to believe in the truth of the Christ message, but these two apostles were denied. Then another apostle who is in Islamic tradition is known as Shamun, but in the biblical tradition is known as Peter. So when he reached there, then the king believed in the message of Jesus. Now the Nafs asks why the rulers took such a long time to believe in Jesus, while God was capable of opening his heart for the receptions of guidance in a moment. So there again he says that again this itmame hujjat as well as the God also wanted to raise or to show the higher status of the apostles as well as Jesus, so that people could come to the truth that was being preached by God. So this series of questions deals with the Jewish or Christian religious tradition, or as we use in Quranic exegesis, the Israeliyats or the biblical scholars. But interestingly, and as an exception to what Professor Amit sir was talking about, the syncretistic or living together separately, there are 5 questions in which Wajid Ali Shah is directly engaging with the Shia-Sunni politics. He starts with the question that is being asked by the Nafs about the cursed tree in the Quran. In Quranic verse, there is a tree, and it is said that God took Prophet Muhammad to see that tree. Okay. So the question that the Nafs asks is that was this cursed tree disobedient to God? And that is why it was cursed. So Wajid Ali Shah says, or not Wajid Ali Shah, sorry, the intellect replies to Wajid Ali Shah that this objection is raised against the exegesis of the Ahlul Sunnah, because the cursed tree, according to the exegesis of the Ahlul Bayt, refers to the Bani Umayyah. Because in Islamic traditions, family genealogy is also described as Shajara. So Shajara, Sufi tradition also follows that Shajara or Silsila traditions, which is the family tree. So here Wajid Ali Shah's intellect says that this cursed tree in the Quran especially refers to the Bani Umayyah. Another polemical debate that he engages vehemently is related to the claim of Fatima in the property of Prophet Muhammad, which is in the Persian tradition is known as the incident of Fedak. Fedak was the name of the garden which was given to Prophet Muhammad in Fay. Fay is the taxation that is collected from the subjugated people. But the Sharia position is that the benefit from the Fay will be utilized for the community as a whole. Okay, so soon after Prophet Muhammad's death, Fatima along with Ali went to Abu Bakr, the first caliph, to claim the property for herself, but Abu Bakr denied by saying that the Prophet has said that whatever prophets leave behind is sadaqah. It is not warasa or virasa. So that is why he will continue to use that property as Prophet Muhammad was using it during his lifetime. So this is the story, but now the nafs comes with the questions about another property that was owned by Aisha, the Prophet's wife. Because Prophet Muhammad was buried in the room that was occupied by Aisha. So after Prophet Muhammad, the first two caliphs, Abu Bakr and Umar, were also buried in that room. So the nafs asked that there are 3 or 4 things that needs to be addressed. The first one is, did Aisha own that property? Because Umar sought permission from Aisha to be buried in that room. So he said that if Aisha owned that property, that Fatima's claim for the feather was also valid. If not, then the first 2 caliphs were buried in an usurped land. Okay. The second one is, the burial of the 2 caliphs in the room was also disrespectful of the Prophet, because they were trying to equal the Prophet by being buried next to him. So these polemics that Wajid Ali Shah is talking about, another one polemics that he refers to here is with reference to the incidents of Mi'raj, which is, this is the Islamic month in which this Mi'raj happens, which refers to the heavenly ascension of Prophet Muhammad to the presence of divinity. So opinions among Islamic scholars are divided whether this ascension was physical or spiritual. So majority of the Muslim scholars, including the Shias and Sunnis, believe that this was a physical ascension. Okay. But there is a dissenting note from Aisha and Muawiyah, because both of them, Aisha the Prophet's wife and Muawiyah the founder of the Umayyad dynasty, so both of them say that no, it was a spiritual ascension. When the nafs asked the intellect to explain the reasons why these 2 persons differ from the majority of the Muslim opinions, so the intellect replies that this has been reported from Aisha and Muawiyah, and you can understand the value of or the reliability of their narrations or translations. And the third section of question that he deals relates to the exegetical or commentaries on the Quran related to certain theological issues. For example, the punishment of the dead. When the dead bodies are decomposed or the dead bodies are burned, so how will the bodies will be punished? So he is addressing these questions. Another one is about the destiny or predestiny. When the spirits were created, according to Muslim theological belief, it was decided in pre-eternity that who will believe and who will not believe. So these kinds of theological questions are also asked or addressed by the intellect. So now my question, which I give an answer here, is groping where to situate this intellect. Does this intellect come from the Farangi Mahalli schooling traditions? Because the early Shi'i scholars were also educated in the Madrasa Farangi Mahalli, which was an example of interactions or coexistence of the 2 different religious traditions. But with passage of time, as the Shi'i or the Nawabi states gradually consolidated its power, then the advent of Usuli Shia Shia scholars from Iran and Iraq, as Paul had highlighted, played a significant role in that one. Or this intellect or rationality that Wajid Ali Shah is relying upon in dealing with, I think, the colonial intellectual or traditions. So this is an open-ended question. I am still groping to deal with that one. But another thing, that this cautious selections of theme which are being addressed by the nafs and aql in the month of Ramadan, while Wajid Shah is sitting along with Rafiud Dawla in the mosque and deliberating on that one, tells us that even though this Shah, as Shah has highlighted, that Wajid Ali Shah once said that Shias or Sunnis are two eyes. I cannot give any of one of them. But then again, when he sits for a serious deliberations, he does engage, or he is being engaged or influenced by the polemical culture or the munazarati culture which he had inherited from Lucknow, which was in the neighborhood of the Farangi Mali traditions, and he has brought to Jadavpur. But interestingly, even today, if we visit Jadavpur during the month of Ramadan, again the boundaries between the Shiites and the Sunnis becomes blurred, as it becomes very difficult to distinguish who is Sunnis and who is Shiites. Because I myself visited a Sunni house on the 10th of Muharram, where they had organized an assembly, a jalsa, to commemorate the tragic event of the martyrdom of Imam Hussain. So these are questions that I am still grappling, and I hope that I will find some answers in the course of discussion here or in further deliberations in the course of reading more and more of Wajid Ali Shah. Thank you very much.
So from the world of religious traditions that Wajid Ali Shah dealt with, now we move on to Dr. Navrat Jan Afridi, who's going to talk about the cosmopolitanism that we're talking about, the connectivity between Lucknow and Kolkata.
Dr. Afridi teaches undergraduate and postgraduate courses and supervises BA, MA and PhD research projects in Jewish history, genocide studies, interfaith relations, minority studies, anti-Semitism studies and popular culture studies. His courses in Jewish history and Holocaust studies happen to be the only such courses in Asia, excluding China and Israel. His myriad publications include a monograph titled Jews, Judaizing Movements and the Traditions of Israelite Descent in South Asia, an edited collection with Priya Singh, several papers in peer-reviewed journals, chapters in edited books published by prestigious international scholarly publishing houses, articles and op-eds in popular media, including India's leading English dailies. Over to you, sir.
Professor Murmu, Professor Day, Dr. Rizvi, Dr. Sudeshna Banerjee, Mr. Das, ladies and gentlemen. I find myself very privileged to have the opportunity to speak at this seminar. The title of my talk is The Lingering Presence of Nawab Wajid Ali Shah in Lucknow and Calcutta. I won't be speaking on the personality of Nawab Wajid Ali Shah. Rather, I would speak on who remembers him, why he is still remembered by those who remember him, who are those who remember him, and what he is remembered for. Please bear with me when I take a couple of minutes at the end of my presentation to read out a few Urdu poems. Sorry for my inability to translate two of those poems. I was born in Lucknow, and that is also where I grew up. I relocated to Calcutta 7 years ago when I joined Presidency University. Soon after that, at a party, I met a person whose visiting card had the royal emblem of the erstwhile state of our. When I pointed this out to him, he introduced himself as a direct descendant of Nawab Wajid Ali Shah. I was quite surprised that in spite of being a government servant, he saw nothing wrong in using the royal crest of Awadh on his visiting card. We all know that the Maharajas and Nawabs were de-recognized in India when it was declared a republic. And in the early 70s, laws were passed that took away their privy purses. In other words, they were not entitled to use their royal insignia anymore. If their descendants today continue to do so, it is a blatant insult to the republic that we are. It is noteworthy that the last emperor of China, Henry Puyi, in his autobiography, wrote, quote, "On November 26, 1960, I received my voter's certificate with my name written on it. I Sengyora Puyi. And it seemed to me that nothing in my whole life was as valuable as this. When I placed my vote in the vermilion ballot box, I felt myself the richest man in the world. I was now a citizen of a country of 650 million people." Unquote. It must be taken into account that Puyi spent the rest of his life as a gardener. He obtained training, and that is how he made a living for the rest of his life. There are still a few people in Lucknow who shamelessly continue to prefix Nawab to their names, and even if they do not do so, they subtly encourage others to address them with the prefix of Nawab, both orally and in writing. One such person was Jafar Mir Abdullah. In all the obituaries that appeared in the press upon his death, the title Nawab was prefixed to his name. This tendency is not confined to the descendants of the Nawabin of Awadh, but is far more widespread. It has to do with the Indian obsession with hierarchy, as Pawan K. Verma rightly observes, quote, "To an Indian, the projection of power and the recognition of status are intimately related. When a person's entire worth is dependent on the position he occupies on a hierarchical scale, the assertion of status becomes of crucial importance." Unquote. Certain descendants of Nawab Wajid Ali Shah appear to be bent upon crediting him for the things in which he had little role to play, attributing to him achievements and accomplishments that he never envisioned, such as the development of Calcutta's multi-million ready-made garment industry, and seeing reverence and admiration for him where there is little. Sahibzada Wasif Mirza, president of the Awadh Royal Family Association, perceives Satyajit Ray's Shatranj Ke Khiladi as his homage to him. On the contrary, the fact is that at one point of time, Ray felt such aversion for Nawab Wajid Ali Shah that he was almost about to abandon the film. Celebrated American actor Andrew Robinson, former director of the Master of Fine Arts acting program at the University of Southern California, in his foreword for the producer of Shatranj Ke Khiladi, Suresh Jindal's memoir, My Adventures with Satyajit Ray, The Making of Shatranj Ke Khiladi, reveals how Ray declined to accept Shamazadi's offer to translate for him into English Nawab Wajid Ali Shah's diary, in which he very explicitly describes his sex life from the age of 8, and his letters from Calcutta to his wife in Lucknow, saying, "Don't tell me all this because then I'll dislike him even more." It was only the Nawab's patronage of music that redeemed him to a certain degree in Ray's eyes. Hence, it is sad, though not surprising, that there is not a single institution devoted to the study and training of dance, music, and drama named after Nawab Wajid Ali Shah, either in Lucknow or in Calcutta, the two cities where he lived, and extended his patronage to these performing arts. After all, his most enduring image is that of a womanizer, a sex maniac with 375 wives, 31 sons, and 25 daughters. Though Shah tried to explain his extreme polygamy as virtuous in nature. He wrote, quote, "The Nawab was a very not to cast a glance on non-mahram women, that is, women who are not legally married to him." Quote, unquote. No matter how much we blame the British propaganda against him, his promiscuous image was not baseless. We know this from most credible sources that he suffered from venereal diseases such as gonorrhea and scabies. He shows himself spineless when, just in order to get his monthly pension of 1 lakh rupees from the British and to retain the title of King of Awadh, he expresses regret on the conduct of his wife Begum Mahal for siding with the rebels in a letter dated 5th October 1859 addressed to Lord Canning, a clear deviation from his earlier soliloquy in Husn Akhtari, in which he had eulogized her for. In sharp contrast, Begum Mahal had refused a royal pension of 12 lakh rupees offered to her by the British, and had instead chosen a life of poverty and exile in Nepal. A Chinese mission led by Ma Xuanzong and Wu Huangpi that visited Matyaburj in August 1881 expressed its surprise upon discovering his hedonistic lifestyle in the following words, quote, "Dependent upon others, acting slavishly, and living shamefacedly like dung, how could he be peaceful and happy?" Unquote. On the one hand, he seems to lack self-respect. On the other hand, he appears to be full of vanity and false pride that kept him from interacting with the contemporary colossal figures of the Bengal Renaissance, such as Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay, Michael Madhusudan Dutt, and Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. He displays no interest in learning Bangla and exploring the richness of its vast culture, vast literature. In fact, it is this characterization of the aristocracy and nobility of Lucknow in popular culture. An example of it is Anwar Maqsood's Urdu comic series Loose Talk, broadcast on Pakistani television from 2002 to 2008. In an episode of which Muin Akhtar plays an effeminate Lucknowite aristocrat visiting Pakistan. When asked what he used to do in Lucknow, the visiting Lucknowite Nawab tells him that clad in a muslin kurta, he used to smell jasmine flowers and watch quail fights. And in the evenings, he used to listen to ghazal recitals after putting on its perfume. It is followed by a query regarding his current occupation, which he discloses is now the cleaning of choked drains in front of his residence. When the host Anwar Maqsood confirms with him that was it not his love for cricket that brought him to Pakistan to watch a cricket match, he answers in the affirmative and tells him how he played cricket a lot in his past. When asked where, he tells that he used to play in his maternal grandmother's bedroom with his female cousins. Clearly, there are innuendos here hinting at promiscuity. Considering all this, it is not surprising that Nawab is often vilified. It becomes all the more understandable when we see it as an impact of the current macro politics of India, which in general is Islamophobic. There is abundance of such videos and commentaries on the internet that portray him in a very negative light. There is no doubt that this is highly unfair to the Nawab. In spite of all that has already been pointed out, there is much that he deserves to be credited for. His contributions to the fields of dance, drama, music, literature, and architecture, and the patronage he extended to them, as well as to the development of Lucknowi cuisine and the observance of Muharram, have been profound. The most prominent being Kathak, Thumri, and Urdu poetry. The profoundness of his contributions can be gauged from the fact that his name has kind of become synonymous to Lucknow. I won't delve upon them, as much has already been said and written about them by scholars, and whatever lacuna that may still be there would be filled in by my colleagues during the 2 days of the seminar. I would abstain from doing so also because of the lack of time. I would rather try to bring to your attention how sad it is that it is only a tiny section of the population that gives the Nawab his due in terms of recognition. Not that the Nawab has been completely forgotten in Lucknow. He continues to be remembered only by a small fraction of Lucknow's population, the tiny section of Urdu-speaking Muslim elite, particularly the Shias, frozen in time, living in nostalgia for the bygone era of the Nawabin of Lucknow. The biggest name among them is Muzaffar Ali, who has staged Nawab Wajid Ali Shah's opera in Mustafa several times and produced and directed a biographical television drama series, Jane-Alam, on him, broadcast on Doordarshan many years ago. He has held a dance and music festival in honor and memory of Nawab Wajid Ali Shah 7 times under the auspices of the Lucknow chapter of his NGO, Rumi Foundation. Rumi Foundation's website describes it in the following words. Quote, over the last 7 editions, Wajid Ali Shah Festival has explored the idiom of Kathak, Thumri, and Krishna Bhakti, blending it with the rich Sufi traditions of Awadh. Presented in many heritage locations and monuments as magnificent costume pageants through dance ballets, Wajid Ali Shah Festival has become a trendsetter in revitalizing the syncretic culture of the region, thus adding an attractive dimension to tourism and promotion of culture, crafts, and cuisine. Wajid Ali Shah festivals over the years have presented holistic concerns for conserving culture and environment through innovative, creative expressions. However, Muzaffar Ali has not been able to hold the festival for the last 4 years. It is disappointing to find predominantly only the Shias remembering Nawab Wajid Ali Shah, for he was a person who rose above the binaries of Hindu and Muslim and Shia and Sunni. However, the saving grace is that 2 names who figure prominently among those non-Muslims who display great nostalgia for the bygone Lucknow after the passing away of the local historian Yogesh Parveen are the Urdu poet Abhishek Shukla and his Dastan friend Himanshu Bajpai. They have built a following for themselves by singing hymns to Lucknow, only following the trend laid down by Nawab Wajid Ali Shah. When he was banished to Calcutta, the Nawab had written, Babul Mora Nehar Chut Ho Jaye, Char Tahar Mil Mori Doli Uthaye, Mora Apna Begana Chut Ho Jaye. O Father, my Father, I am leaving home. The 4 pallbearers lift my palanquin. I am leaving those who were known and my own, and leaving those who were unknown. In our times, Abhishek Shukla Lucknow, उस शाह के इल्म व फन का हासिल है लखनऊ, अमन व अमा का इश्क हामिल है लखनऊ, हम में हमारी जात में शामिल है लखनऊ, जिसके लिए खल्क परस्ती यही तो है, लफ्जों का घर ख्याल की बस्ती यही तो है, शामों का रक्स सुख की हमदो सना यही है, सांसों का साज जहन को ताजा हवा है ये, मिन्नत कशों के हक में मुसलसल दुआ है ये, शायर ने इसके बारे में सुनिए कहा है ये, जन्नत है जिसके हुस्न नाज़ा यही तो है, लखनऊ यही है शाहे अजीजा यही तो है, शेरो सुखन का बाग़ इरम हू बहू है ये, हमको है जिस पे नाज वही लखनऊ है ये. In sharp contrast to them, the late Anwar Nadeem, born in Lucknow half a century after the Nawab's death, indulged in a sharp critique of this attitude of Lucknowites of living in the past and closing their eyes to its decadence in his nazm Sarzameen-e-Zindagi. मुझे नाराज आएगी ये सरजमीन-ए-ज़िंदगी, ये जिंदगी का बांपन, ये बांपन की दिलकशी, ये दिलकशी की दास्तां, ये दास्तां में आदमी, या आदमी के बलबलों का शाहकार आखिरी. मुझे नाराज आएगी ये सरजमीन-ए-ज़िंदगी, ये जन्नतों की बेटियां, ये महवशों की टोलियां, ये काफिला बहार का, ये रोशनी की डोलियां, ये रंग बू के दरमियां दिलो नजर की झोलियां, ये आरज़ू के ज़मज़मे, ये ख्वाहिशों की बोलियां. मुझे नाराज आएगी ये सरजमीन-ए-ज़िंदगी, ये सरजमीन-ए-बातपन, ये शायरों की अंजुमन, जैसे कि इत्र कैफ में बसे हुए से तैराहन. यहाँ गुलाब की तरह से खिल रहा है हर बदन, शौर गम से दूर है अभी तक मेरा वतन. मुझे नाराज आएगी ये सरजमीन-ए-ज़िंदगी. ये गुफ्तगू के सिलसिले हैं पैगामों के वास्ते कि बढ़ रहे हैं रोज़ व शब दिलो नजर के फासले. सुना रही है जिंदगी नई गजल जो बिन कहे, खड़ा हुआ है लखनऊ कहानियों के सामने. मुझे नाराज आएगी ये सरजमीन-ए-ज़िंदगी. Anwar Nadeem laments the tendency to minimize Lucknow just to its food, clothing, and poetry, and the refusal to see beyond them. बस वही नकाब झूमर लचका गोटा शाम गरारा, बस वही कबाब कोफ्ते रोगनजोश चपाती पराठे और बिरयानी, बस वही तेज खुशबूदार गर्म मसालों की दादागिरी, बस वही शीश महल सिवई और बालूशाही की जलवागिरी, बस वही लंतरानी में बहुत कुछ छुपा लेने की कोशिश, बस वही शीन काफ की फिसलन पे तमस्खुर की बौछार, बस वही सर्व जन बस्तियों में दूरियों के खतरनाक कांटे, बस वही गजल के पीछे उर्दू शायरी का बहुत लंबा काफिला, बस वही शेरी किताबों का जखीरा, बेरूह जहनों का मुकालमा, बस वही 10-15 मौज़ूआत गजल फैक्ट्री का सब कुछ, बस वही फटे हारे कलम का अफसोसनाक अंजाम, बस वही गजल से बेजार इल्म और दानिश का रवैया. थैंक यू.
Both an amazing paper, Dr. Afridi. Now the floor is open for questions. So it's for the audience to take up the cue from the criticality and that we have seen in this paper. So volunteers.
Thank you. I'm Mohammad Riaz. I have one question to Dr. Rizvi. You said that the book Wajid Shah wrote is in 3 Ramadan periods and 3 chapters. And you mentioned about 3 sets of 3 types of questions that is not in a way provoking. I was curious to know, like these 3 sets, these 3 chapters and 3 sets of questions, like they are same or like they are like overlapping. That's one. And the second part of it is like these were written in 3 different Ramzans, or like some part of each chapter is written in each of the 3 Ramzans. Thank you.
So the 3 chapters were written in 3 different Ramzans because he gives the dates. Because he gives the dates also in the beginning of the chapters. The first chapter was written in 1257, and he mentioned it. And he has also mentioned in Persian prose also the dates of the chapters as well. So these are different, and I didn't find any overlap because the themes that he discusses in the chapters do not emerge in the 3 chapters. Okay, and the 3 religious groups that he refers to, one is the Christians, another is the Jews, and the third one is the Sunnis. But along with that, yes, of course, he positions the Shiites also within the discourse. And sometimes, to justify the claim of the intellect, he is also referring to the Sunni sources. But as the Sunni sources themselves, Muslim Firdaus, the text that he is referring to it, that we justify when he explained the reason behind naming Fatima as Fatima. Because I did not discuss everything. So that the Sunnis also says that Fatima is the person, literally means that one who separates or prevents. And literally it is used, it comes from the word Fatam, when the mother tries to wean the child away. Okay. So he says that Fatima is trying to prevent her followers, Muhibban, lovers, or Dostan, friends, and will separate them from the hell. Since she is the leader of the women of the hell. So like the mother is trying to protect her child, Fatima will also protect her followers from the hell. And that is why she was named as Fatima. She was weaning away the sinners from the hell and taking them to the heaven. Thank you.
Volunteers. Wajid Ali Shah's mother.
Wajid Ali Shah's mother, she went and met the Brits trying to get back the kingdom of Awadh. Do we know much about? And she was, I think she was buried in Paris. Do we know much about her? And also, how far is it true that Wajid Ali Shah was poisoned? Is there much truth to the story, or is just another story doing the rounds in that circle?
So, what writes about his mother? Hami malakaye kishware khush lakab, mura walida bawat ba sab taraf, ke shudd jaan bahak u shahre France, pay ghusl u bud nahre France, kesar khurde u bud Sikandar banam, ke hamraye hi u shudd badaras salam. So here he says that his mother, who has a good title, and Kishwar was the title, Malika Kishwar. So she passed away in France, and she was bathed in with the water from the canals of France. And another brother of Wajid Ali Shah, whose name was Sikandar, he too died along with her in France. So
he died in England.
And the next question, other question about poison. So I have not come across any source which talks about, any reliable source which talks about his death due to poison.
Well, I don't know about about this conspiracy theory of Wajid Ali Shah having been poisoned, but I am aware that his son British Padre, who after living in Nepal for a number of years in exile, when he returned to Calcutta, it was he who was poisoned by one of the women there.
Descendants. One of the descendants.
Whatever is in the net should be taken with a pocket full of salt. The other question I have is, why is, Wajid Ali Shah, yes. Why is Wajid Ali Shah so important? Is it because he's the last Nawab, or he's kind of the starting point of our Indian patriotic movement, the revolution? Because he himself wasn't, from whatever history that I'm not a student of history, but I enjoy history, but whatever little you learn, he was more into poetry and in his personal pleasure than anything else. So, why his figure is so important in Indian history? Just, it could be a long discourse, but we can just summarize it, perhaps.
On my part, I have mentioned 3 reasons for which Wajid Ali Shah is being remembered. The first one is politics. The colonial politics, as it consolidated power throughout India. So Awadh did play a major role, and it is at the center of debate whether politics was first, empire was concomitant factors, or empire was first and politics came later. So the company and the empire connection, which is a major issue of debate among scholars, is centered on the political development, what happens in Awadh. The famous debate between P.J. Marshall and Rudrakshu Mukherjee does illustrate that one. So politics is one factor. So to understand colonial politics, we need to focus on what happened in Awadh. Another one is Wajid Ali Shah's patronage and guidance for artists involved in different performing arts. Because Lucknow did Rahas Khana. So these play a major role in the development of performing arts. And speakers did refer to the different forms of arts as well. And the third one that I am trying to bring now by focusing on this text is the religious change that happens after the formations of the Awadhi state. Because yes, of course, Madrasa Frangi Mahalli did not receive that patronage after the death of the first founder of the Nizamiya school, Nizamuddin Sohalvi. With the advent of Usuli scholars from Iran and Iraq, and which has been documented by Azad Ali Bilgrami in his Ma'asul Qur'an, that yes, on the one hand, we do believe that Wajid Ali Shah did punish two of his officials who quarrel on religious issues, which happens between the Sunnis and Shias. But when we read this text, so whether it was the habitus that informed him consciously or subconsciously of the religious polemics that started with the Shahulahi traditions or with the reformist discourse, wherein Wajid Ali Shah in this text, as I focus on, is trying to make use of rationality or intellectual dimensions of the debate within that one. And I hope that your question can be answered by other speakers, because why Wajid Ali Shah is so important. So these are the three reasons in my view, and others will be aided by my.
Actually, your question is very significant and also very relevant. That's why I am tempted to respond a bit. Poetry, if you study poetry, through poetry you understand the nature of the extension of colonial hegemony and the nature of exploitation. Because if you, in a day-to-day survey, if you study how the British were exercising their authority over Ajodhya over the years, and how they were spreading rumors and false information in a very systematic and organized manner to underestimate the Awadhi Nawabs, to legitimize their actions against the Awadhi Nawabi state. That is very significant. And if you have to study our anti-colonial struggle, at least the development of anti-colonial mindset, nation building process, even though it was in an embryonic form in those days, this will be very significant. For example, his poetry, as I have indicated, that rather implicitly, it was spreading Persianate cosmopolitanism or Persianate heterogenization. Ideologically, this was opposed to the divide and rule policy of the British. So from that larger perspective, from the context of universal humanity, how they viewed humanity and how the British tried to exercise their control, that is the advent of Western political hegemony, was working in the 19th century, could be understood through these sort of literary ventures with which our state was involved. And then, if you think about the first patriotic poet, Henry Louis Vivian Derozio, another victim of this conspiracy, in the Fakir of Janghira, again the Fakir term is very symbolic, that is associated with mysticism. My country, that of glorious past, a beauteous halo circled round thy brow, where's that glory, that reverence now? So these sort of initial protests, responses against this project of exercising colonial hegemony came through the pen of the poets. So from that perspective, studying of poetry, its relationship with governance is very important. For example, after reading, Akbar could not read, but Akbar could appreciate the poetry when it was read out before Akbar. Akbar was non-literate in that sense, but he was learning, mystically oriented. So Hafiz was read out before Akbar. So after consuming the poetry of Hafiz, Akbar abolished jizya, a discriminatory tax structure. So this sort of how we have not studied enough, how the consumption of poetry, appreciation of poetry, celebration of poetry can be related to our understanding of governance and embryonic form of nation building process, particularly our response to colonial hegemony. There's scope for exploring this aspect. So thank you, you raised a very pertinent question, and I responded because I was tempted by you raising of this point. Thank you.
I think I am audible.
This is not a question, this is a query to Professor Das. Professor Dev. I would like to know more about, the alternative modernity that you talked about. What is the nature of that alternative modernity? Are the features of that alternative modernity similar to, or in addition to, or different from the tropes of European modernity? This is my first query. The second query, you talked about the difference between Wadatul Wujud and Wadatul Shuhud. I would like to know more about that, because I knew that Wadatul Wujud meant that God is the only reality. So there is no distinction between God and His creation. So I would like to know more about it. Thank you.
Very important question. You have not introduced yourself.
From Malta.
From?
Malta.
Okay, thank you. You raised this question. Regarding alternative modernity, for example, tomorrow I will be speaking about a personality, another forgotten personality in our history, particularly the history of Bengal. Qazi Abdul Odu, the modernizer of Bengali Muslim society. He deals with this aspect with reference to the German poet philosopher Goethe, one of his favorite personalities. He wrote about Goethe as well. Now, I visited once, it was in 2014, I visited the museum, actually Goethe's house has been transformed into a museum in Germany. I found that it's a huge house, he had a big family, there was a laboratory as well as a library, there was study room for each of his children, very significant. And I also found that actually there was a rivalry between the Germans and the English. And that's a sort of a narrative that modernity has to emerge from industrial revolution, enlightenment, Renaissance and Reformation, parliamentary experimentation in Britain, etc. But these German philosophers, they also wanted to explore glory beyond the territoriality of Europe. And they found that flashes of glory could be explored even in the Oriental world. So that's why they found that, if you carefully, that's I have just mentioned, that the poetry of Hafiz, Rumi, Sadi, Omar Khayyam, very significant. You will find a sort of modernity, if you understand by modernity, that a particular skill or propensity of humanity to accommodate the so-called other under code. And have a meaningful, if you understand modernity by that, then that sort of an experimentation can be discovered in the Oriental civilization, because when Ramon Roy was writing Tuhfatul Muwahhidin, Gift to the Monotheist, he was not exposed to Western civilization and culture. He started to learn English only from 1808 onwards. So Tuhfatul Muwahhidin was published in 1803 and 1804. But you will find flashes of rationality in the pages of Tuhfatul Muwahhidin. He was deriving that train from the rationalist school of Islam, now forgotten, Mu'tazila school. And even the Bauls were familiar with this term. That's why Lalun Shah is saying Mu'tazila Tare Koi. So it was not only the monopoly of Raja Rammohn Roy. We have not discussed that. In the notes on the Bengal Ransom, there is only one line devoted to the Muslim society, to Mosharraf Hossain, by the famous historian. No mention about the Bengal countryside, what was happening in the countryside. And ends by sending Ghoda to the countryside. Gandhi also wanted to discover India in the countryside. So these are interesting things. Rabindranath could have developed his university in Calcutta. He had that caliber. He did it in Bolpur and in Bardhaman, Birbhum, because he wanted to go away from the this sort of artificial, superficial epicenter of cultural life. That's why Panubabu is the representative of this superficiality. So Buddha is the representative of that essence of Indian culture, who could be discovered in the countryside. So this dichotomy has to be understood. So this alternative modernity, which is not exposure to Western civilization and culture, it had an early pre-colonial beginning. So in that sense, Darashiko was also a Renaissance personality. You will find the continuity in Raja Rammohn Roy and the likes, and even in Rabindranath Tagore, Kiti Mohan Sen and so on. You don't understand Kiti Mohan Sen if you forget that awakening in India. I was calling it Persian heterogenization. And there's a lingua franca, Persian language, which was spoken not only in India, but also in Turan and also in the Persian Empire, Safavid Empire, and parts of Ottoman Empire. So if you study global history, it's not the monopoly of the West. There was a different global history. There was a different modernity. That is the alternative modernity. So that's why Goethe was inspired by that. Goethe is saying that light, more light. And this candle or the chirag is very important in mystical. I think symbolically, the representatives of hegemonic orthodoxy, the hegemonic polity in this case is represented by the colonial powers. So history from that perspective, but theological in our historiography, incorporation of theological debates is a recent phenomenon. You will not find a long history of this incorporation. So now you have to understand that, otherwise you don't understand of fundamentalism, where you find in our very eclectic cosmopolitan culture is flourishing. You will not be able to answer that. You will not be able to address that. Wadatul Bodhit means Hama Ust, everything is He, with capital H, God is reflected in everything. Pantheism, Sarveshwara. But Wadatul Shuhu, carefully follow. Hama as in Persian means from. Hama as Ust, everything is from God. It means I reserve the right to discriminate against certain communities or certain persons, that he is from God, created by God, but God is not reflected in him, that is his caste. So you are entitled to denounce someone as kafir. It is a very discriminatory philosophy. It became popular in Northern Africa. One country, one religion, one language. I have many Muslim friends in Algeria. They are Muslims. They start their day by reading Surah Fatiha. But they say, I have a mother tongue. But we are discouraged to speak in our mother tongue. What is the mother tongue? The tribal language, Berber language. So Arabization. Arabization means homogenization. Persian. So if you understand modernity as cosmopolitanism, homogenization. That you will find in Wajid. That you will find in Raja Rammohn Roy, Darashiko, Kiti Mohan Sen, Rabindranath Tagore. That you have to understand Wajid Shah, and also our in a larger perspective, perhaps in a trans-imperial perspective. This is not the empire of the West. This is a different sort of an empire, but they were also experimenting with this sort of accommodation, appropriation, incorporation. That is very significant for our meaningful, creative survival. I think I could address some of your queries.
Mention of questions that were put by the audience. Now we break for tea. Tea is waiting for us. We'll assemble here at 4:15 again. Thank you so much.
It's coming tomorrow.
Yes, I know.